So, Justin, you want to recap our conversation?
Sure. I guess, Alan, we were just kind of picking up the conversation that we had a little bit about supporting members and kind of tossing around ideas around how we might modify that or not. I know if I understood you correctly, I think you were in favor of doing away with the pay to play, as I would call it, element and the volunteer requirement and just going with the registration, which I told Natalie I kind of support, although I kind of want a safeguard in there as far as I feel like they should be somewhat committed greens. I do feel like greens should be deciding green matters and we want to safeguard against outside influence. However, maybe unlikely that may be at this point in our development, but then Dan did pass that thing, I guess, at the last convention that said if you were a registered green for, what was it, Natalie? This would be like the third way you could become a supporting member.
2 years.
2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's close to kind of like the safeguard I would have in mind. I'm not sure I would go 2 years, maybe a year, but we do have some language in our bylaws that says in order to vote on certain things, you have to be registered green as of the last nominating season or as last primary season, excuse me.
So basically, if you want to be able, let me go back, to nominate candidates for office, we have to abide by state law, and that's registered greens can vote for their nomination of their candidate. So that's registered greens, no strings attached. But for internal matters, we can decide, who can decide internal matters of the Green Party, and also who can decide who are the various representatives on the steering committee, the national delegate, and so on. I agree that having a 2-year mark to become a supporting member makes it easy for people who are committed Greens, have been around. It makes it super easy to verify who is a supporting member or an auxiliary member, and we can talk about that. Seth raised the issue that sometimes when people move, their registration is interrupted. And so that's something that we need to, like if somebody says, well, I was registered all this time, oh, but I moved, to have some documentation. I mean, people can contest that. Having said that, I think it's a good idea. It makes things much easier. It was adopted. There was no contest. There's no issue about that. The only thing is that if we have new volunteers who come in who are really hyped about the Green Party, who start participating, doing things, getting really involved, why would they have to wait for 2 years to be able to vote in Green Party matters? That to me sounds very unfair. It's in favor of people who are very established. It totally demotivates young people who may not have been able to vote Green, or who just maybe coming into the political age, or they're involved. And so having this 2-year mark to become a supporting member, I think would totally demotivate newcomers, and it's unfair for them. So I think that's why we have these other ways that people can, demonstrate that they're supporting members. We don't want to make it just money, which is where there was this possibility of volunteering. The threshold is really low. It's like 3 times 30 minutes in 6 months, something like that, like super low. And people can know, super low. If they can't, super low. I think that it is important to have like a smaller window. The reason it is 2 years is because it ties in with the primaries. So to make sure that people don't like register Democrat or Republican to vote in the primaries and then re-register Green, and then, that sort of thing. Having a 2-year mark really makes it like, okay, you're really a supporting Green Party member. You're not going to be messing up with another party's primaries and stuff like that.
Yeah, I guess the 2-year mark, I guess, makes sense in that regard. And I see your point about giving people another path, I suppose, to becoming a supporting member in less than 2 years. And I guess that path would be by making a donation, which is really between $20 and $30 in most places in Oregon. And or the volunteer requirement. So, and the volunteer requirement is another area though, like, so Alan, the conversation started because Joe Rowe brought this email. So this is kind of, I was responding to his email about the whole supporting member definition being somewhat gray or foggy. And he's right, it is like, even like the 30 minutes for 3 months thing, like, can you cram in 90 minutes into a month? Like, that's kind of open to interpretation a little bit. I don't think that was like the intent of the rule. I think the intent of the rule is that you would show some dedication over time. That would be my interpretation of the rule.
Yep, that's exactly it.
So, you know, in which case we could just say like, oh, there might be like a 90-day threshold for registration. But I see your point as to wanting to give people a path to have certain voting rights without having to be registered for a full 2 years, especially like the younger folks like the Devin Lawsons or whoever. But, and are we going to create this auxiliary member status, or, you know, because that's another gray, foggy area a little bit too. Like, I mean, I'm definitely open to opening up membership to folks below the voting age, but like, I think we have to like define that and put it into like.
Go ahead then, Alan.
Yeah.
So to shift the topic a bit, I'm confused about the timeline of this whole thing. We have a convention coming up in mid-September. The bylaws say that any proposed changes to the bylaws or constitution have to be submitted to the SCC within at least 30 days before the convention, which would be like next Friday. Yet we're going into this process of a lot of rewriting and discussion of bylaws that I think either we're going to end up with a rush job or not building enough consensus to get something passed, or so I guess I'm trying to understand how these things are interacting, like John's conflict resolution over the bylaws with the deadlines for the convention. How do we sort
Right. Well, this conversation started in a much a reactionary way to an email from Joe Rowe. So I don't think it's going to be something that's resolved in this upcoming convention as far as supporting member status goes, but I do think we eventually need to address it. But I think for this convention, we probably need to just stick with the project that you all have been working on, because I don't think we have enough runway to do a good job on anything else.
What I suggest, Alan, is let's go through, I mean, we've worked through a lot of the documentation, you and I, over the past couple of weeks. What I suggest is to review the last part, which is the conventions. You sent something. I haven't had the time to read it.
That's fine. What I did over the last couple of days is I just went and copy pasted Brian's bylaws and then rewrote them with an eye to all the things we've been discussing, so I could have a clean copy where it's simple and easy to read. But I think some people are still trying to find this meeting because they know Chuck was looking for the link and Felipe was in the waiting room.
Let me call Felipe. I mean, the thing is that, you know, I do the best I can. I mentioned it, you know, we're going to use only one link. I posted it there. I posted it everywhere. I don't know why John sent the link to the campaigns committee. I think that it's because we're using the various committee, the times for the various committees. And so he thinks that we're going to use all of the different links. It's not going to work. We need just the one link. Let me call Felipe real quick.
Completely understandable. We're all doing the best we can. Maybe we can add this to the agenda for communications committee to just come up with some solutions to iron this out. So we don't,
You know, there's not going to be a media communications committee because it's going to be used for this type of conversation. We are advertising, we have advertised the meetings that we usually held regularly. We chose the times of the meetings to coincide with the regularly scheduled meetings, so that everybody knows everybody who's been involved knows kind of when it is. It's been widely advertised. It's been widely advertised on
That's
Facebook.
okay.
You know, like there's.
yeah, I mean, I ended up here because I went back to the Facebook promotions and I clicked on the link out of there. But the emails made it confusing because people started chiming in with other links, and we need to clean that up.
Yeah, and that's not coming from me. John get confused. He started sending another mail, and
I'm not pointing fingers. We just don't want the confusion.
I know. So you know.
Well, let's let that rest. And what is the aim of the conversations we're having like tonight and that we've been having? I mean, what are we trying to achieve by what point in time?
So what I suggest is for us to finish reviewing the document that we're proposing and submit it as a proposal to make sure.
I hadn't written that as a proposal. I wrote that as some of my reflections on it so we could have conversations to see if we're on the same wavelength. I did write up stuff that could be used in a proposal today and could share that. But I mean, when do we have to have this whole process finished? And are we actually trying to?
This is the first time that we're having like a series of meetings and organize, you know, for a series of meetings. It hasn't been done before, which is fine. I mean, we're doing the best with the meetings. I suggest if we want to make sure that something gets sent to the convention, we already have the initiating proposal and we can just send, this is the response, and have the final document before, and hopefully our final document will, you know, overlap with, or hopefully Brian will come up to one of these meetings and, you know, say, hey, or, you know, yes or nay. And so we have one proposal going to the convention.
Is the bylaws on the agenda for the convention? Like who? Okay. I know it was voted down once, I believe.
Yes. So if you go to the meeting, to the webpage for the convention, there is a draft agenda, because we try to have a draft agenda for every convention, so it's not coming out of the blue. So that can be finalized also in the next few weeks. Blah, blah, blah. Here's a draft agenda. Review of existing bylaws, key issues and process followed, kind of a little introduction, 45 minutes, maybe a team building exercise, who knows? Discussion of proposal bylaws, final edits, lunch break, or talk about campaigns, and at the same time here send, you know, OPA vote, send vote. And what I suggested is an online vote, explanation of voting process, final results sent out next day at noon, to give us time to like make sure, tally the things, make sure that everybody got their email, that nobody's like missing on the email, make sure that people participated at the convention or were present at some point during the convention. So all of that is posted. Maybe it needs to be made bigger.
So there's no specific version of revised bylaws that are under consideration?
Yes, there is.
And somebody must have submitted it, some particular people.
Brian submitted his thing last year. We spoke with him. He reviewed it and submitted it this year. So that is linked here to the page for the convention.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bylaws proposal. It's the initiating group. That's Brian's document, right? The one that we're reviewing.
Mm-hmm.
And here is a link, a discussion and response, which is the link of the document that we are writing, or we've been writing. So far, that's what we have.
Well, okay, I've got more. I didn't intend this as a actual draft of the way the bylaws would work. As I said, it was more of a commentary. So
Yeah. Yes, and the thing is that we're having these discussions, inviting people to have the discussions. You know, you and I have had a lot of discussions with,
Yeah.
this doesn't work. Maybe what about this? What about that? We've tweaked, we've gone to ideas. Same thing today with Justin, you know, the supporting member. What should we do? Why do we want this? Why don't we want that? And you know, and I propose actually language in terms of the state party committee, and we offered language, right? The state committee, the responding group proposes, first discusses the concerns, then offers suggested wording. So this was one concern, this is another concern, and there's responding group proposes, and this is actual wording, suggested wording, draft ideas, okay? Remove 4B from Brian's idea, and you know, and replace it with this. Replacing IVG with some other things, right? I wrote all of this. I suggest something more broad as a, you know, what I'm suggesting is that there needs to be an outline of the role of the steering committee or the party committee. That's what I suggest. And what I have identified from both the initiating group proposal and the discussions that you and I have had, Alan, is there needs to be like a job description, right? So, and so this is what I suggest. I don't want to go through it because I'm like exhausted and I have to start really early tomorrow morning. But the state party committee is an elected representative committee charged with managing the day-to-day affairs of the state party. As such, SPC members fulfill the following main roles, acting as fiduciaries. You know, we have that legal responsibility, financial responsibility, making sure that things are filed on time. Facilitators, nurturing the development of local cells. Blah, blah, blah. And spokespersons, you know, because if somebody wants to speak with the Green Party, who are they going to address themselves to? Like, they need to know who it is. Yes. And the spokespersons don't necessarily need to be the steering committee or the SPG committee itself, but it can be people who are appointed because they understand how media works, they understand, you know, what are the implications of media, they know how to, you know, have good presence in the media, the professional presence of the media. And convention conveners, that's another big deal. And also elected representatives to various boards or whatever. So, no, and because they're elected representatives, I mean, we're the only thing that's like statewide elected. What I'm saying is that if there needs to be these, if we need to like help facilitate conflict resolution or take decisions because something has happened, we are the only committee that's empowered to take interim decisions to be then ratified later. But like in urgent matters, there's only one body that's elected and empowered to make those decisions, regardless of whatever you want the cells to be. Right.
We're getting into the nitty-gritty details.
But so the thing is this, I don't think that it's in the nitty-gritty. This really spells out the most of it. What I put here is the process to recognize or phase out committees shall be clearly spelled out.
I haven't seen this. You must have added this recently.
Right after a conversation, I sent you an email about it, but I think, I mean, after we had that conversation on Sunday, I took the time and wrote all of this.
Well, I'm going to have to look through it and reconcile it with what I did. If you open in the chat room, this is the kind of thing I was producing in the last day or two.
Yeah, the conventions, which is really, really good. I mean,
yeah, I've got one for the members, one for the state committee, one for the cells, and the convention. So I wrote up a 4 like this, trying to bring it into the form that we would need for bylaws. And the reason I did that was because I'm feeling the press of time to get something together and make it accessible for people able to read through it and understand it.
I only get this one from you. I didn't get another one.
Yeah, there was an earlier email with 3 links. I can link them all in the chat.
To tell you the truth, I have to go. I'm going to make you all co-hosts. I really, my niece, my 20-year-old niece just moved in she just arrived from the East Coast. I started seeing patients at 7:30. I'm like, I
Oh,
don't
wow.
have any more patients.
Oh, that's okay. Just give me a buzz when you got time to confirm this
Why
again.
don't you guys, I'm gonna make you both like I'm gonna make you Alan host and Justin.
I think we're just gonna wrap because there's not much to discuss, and Alan and I just talked 2 days ago, and
Well, I'd like to meet Chuck, so if you leave me on with Chuck, I'd at least like to say hello. And
oh, I didn't realize I could join the meeting.
Yeah, he just joined. And so, what we need to do is make sure that we link all of the documents. The thing is this, Alan. Don't change the link to the initial document that you and I worked on.
I won't change the link to that, no.
Because that's what's linked to all of the promotions, the web page, and all of that. So if you want to make it like an empty document and link all of the different things, that's totally fine. You and I are seeing kind of eye to eye and have threshed out quite a few things. But it's really important because otherwise we're gonna end up with this confusion of just like for the link to the meeting.
Hmm.
Um,
No, I've new documents, new links. I'm not replacing that thing.
So unfortunately, I'm recording this meeting on my computer because I don't have any more space in the Google Drive. So I'm going to leave the computer on and the meeting on, but I'm going to like check off myself.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, guys, for your work. I think that with all of these conversations, we're going to get somewhere because we're having really, really good conversations.
Hello, Mr. Fall. My name is Alan Zundel. I don't believe we've met before.
No, I haven't met you, and so I sent a memo out, and which I actually got moderated on for sending out. I don't know if you saw it or not, but
I don't remember. Been getting a lot of email.
yeah. So so my take, what I've actually said, and I've composed a memo, which I'm going to post on the conventions list. So I watched the YouTube and I saw the work that you and Natalie and Felipe and have made and the progress around advancing what sounds like is going to be a complete kind of overhaul of the bylaws or just key sections of it. I'm actually not quite clear on that.
Yeah, I was trying to get clear on that myself, exactly what we were aiming at by what time, and how the process works.
So my take on all of this is that, and what my memo will say is that well, let me just say this. One of the things that came up in the YouTube that I saw of that meeting is the value and desirability for a dispute resolution process. So there is no dispute resolution process in the Green Party. And my complaint, my argument is that the SEC made a big mistake when it intervened in the business of the Lane chapter Facebook page. Now, that's where we have a big dispute. And as far as members of the SEC are concerned, that was totally appropriate and right and nothing wrong there. But in fact, our Constitution says that business is done at convention by those who show up to participate. We're a participatory democracy at convention. But back to the Lane chapter, the sore point with the Lane chapter is there wasn't a process for dispute resolution. And the event became a hornet's nest and blew up. And the effect of it has been to shun the Lane chapter or the dissident voices within the Lane chapter. And today, Dan Pulyu remains a pariah. He's persona non grata. even though he got half the members of more than a majority of convention to endorse his nomination for the U.S. Senate seat. So we are in fact stuck in a state.
You got that by one vote, just to interject, just to make sure we're clear on that. He barely cleared the threshold.
Well, but the bottom line is that
I mean, Dan has people have opinions of Dan. What in all, I mean, and they're earned. Either they like him for his opinions, or they do not. I mean, we're under no obligation to, bow to Dan Poolhue. We can have our opinions about him.
You're entitled to have your opinions, but you're not entitled to affect policy that denies him his political rights within the party.
Well, I
You
appreciate
didn't give me. You didn't
I
even give
appreciate
me
hearing
about.
your point of view, Mr. Fall, because can I call you Chuck? You mind?
Yeah, you call me Chuck. Yeah,
I've been hearing different versions of what happened
right.
from different people.
Sure.
Including Dan. I've known Dan for about 6 years or more.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe 7. And I guess it's important context for some things that I'm involved in now with the party, but I'm less focused on what happened in the past and more in preventing things from happening in the future, and coming up with a set of bylaws that we have wide consensus on that can forestall some of these problems and maybe even update things in lines with what Brian proposed, so that maybe the whole party can be more effective.
Well, I'm not dismissing that as a noble venture or appropriate or a good thing to do. I'm not
Or a
disputing.
fool's errand.
But it may be a fool's errand if we don't resolve the fundamental problem of can we make a party, and that's where Brian is coming in. Brian's idea were a reaction to the argument over Lane chapter, posting opposing narratives to the official story about the COVID. That's where this all blew up. And a lot of the negative energy is evident in a message from, do you know Thielking? Mr. Thielking,
John Thielking, yeah.
King. He made a public separation from the Lane chapter in an editorial he posted, and he said that the people who are, I consider these my comrades. These are people that were what he called COVID deniers. And he said that the COVID deniers should be shunned like the plague. So I invite you to think about that language and consider the vitriolic nature of it, and consider just how problematic it is, and what in effect followed with the de-administration of the activists from Lane was to shun the Lane chapter. The Lane chapter is not represented on the Pacific Green Party website, nor is the Green Liberty Caucus chapter. So we have an ideological divide over, is there room to be a dissident voice and issue a strong critique of matters that other people think there's nothing to critique here? So this is fundamentally kind of where we're at. And my argument is that we should just let bygones be bygones. We should bury the hatchet. I want Dan fully restored as a member in good standing, as Lori Burton, who has been shunned because of her involvement as a facilitator in the March convention. She has now been made persona non grata by.
Well, real quick, Chuck. I don't want to interrupt your conversation between you and Alan, but I do want to interject some context here. Dan has lost no rights. He can vote. He's been part of committee meetings. I mean, the shunning is only in maybe perception. In reality, he hasn't really been excluded from anything other than, yes, the Lane chapter is no longer pointed at on the website. I will concede that point. But other than that, I mean, he has full participation. Lori deservedly lost her rights as a facilitator. She's still, if she's in Oregon and she's registered green and all that, she's still has all the voting rights that she's always had. We're just not going to invite her to be a facilitator if she's going to be a part of openly flaunting the rules of convention as voted on by the SEC, which you're a part of, and you should know the SEC is empowered to do a couple things. One of them is to interpret the bylaws, which we did. And two is to establish absentee balloting rules, which we also did as our responsibility in advance of the last convention. So just to add some context, Lori and Dan, still, as far as I know, supporting members of the Pacific Green Party with all voting rights and everything else that comes with it. And they're welcome to come to committee meetings. But Lori's lost her privilege to be a facilitator because she overstepped her authority.
So those are points of disagreement and dispute. Dan does
What
not.
point is under dispute? You were there for the vote, Doug. I don't want to derail this conversation because I want Alan to be able to talk to you, but there's nothing to dispute here. You were there at the meetings. You know the SEC interpreted the bylaws, 1, and 2, established absentee balloting rules for that convention. And 3, indisputable, those rules were not followed at convention. You were a part of that, and Lori was a part of that as well. And that's why she is no longer a facilitator. There's nothing to dispute. These are all just like facts.
These are not facts. These are misrepresentations of the rules. You exceeded authority, and you guys are.
No one exceeded authority. The SEC has authority to interpret bylaws, which we did, and authority to establish absentee balloting rules, which we did.
Absentee.
You were the only person to vote against it.
I blocked your proposal.
You can't block it.
I did as an SEC member. I refused to. What you're representing as an SEC decision is by my block, pointing out that it's a misreading of the rules, and you are making up rules in order to rationalize your malfeasance.
I'm not aware of any bylaw that gives a member of the SEC the right to block a decision. This has been dealt.
I was a no vote, Alan, is all that I'm saying. I was a no vote on a 5-3 or 5-2 decision or something like that, or 4-2 decision.
I believe it was 5-1. Tuesday wasn't there.
But here's the deal, Alan. Our Constitution says we run our business at convention. The people who show up at convention make decisions for the party. The SEC administrates, and the SEC has latitude to interpret, the business documents of the party for sure, but it doesn't have latitude to insinuate that a resolution may be included in an absentee ballot when only 3 categories are permitted for absentee ballot: SEC, endorsements, and selecting our candidates. Anything else is handled at convention.
Well, to add context, your resolution is a made-up category that, you're right, is not mentioned in the bylaws.
It's other business. It's other business. The bylaw is A4 is specific. It specifies.
Can I ask you why? This is a thing you always kind of refuse to answer, but I'd like you to address this in front of Alan. Why is it that you don't want other people to vote on this? Why is it that you did not want me or Seth to have a ballot at the last convention? You registered for the convention. Why?
If you showed up at, the people who showed up at convention.
Okay, no. Answer the question. Why should I, as a elected member and officer of the Green Party, who also registered for the convention by your own rules, by your own arguments, registering for the convention should guarantee you a ballot, and yet I didn't get one? Why?
I don't know what happened. Did you vote on the SEC?
I'd like to ask a question, which is how discussing this is bearing upon any decisions that we would be discussing in this meeting today. like when we're trying to revise bylaws and come up with a better version that there's wide consensus on, why is going back to the events of a couple of years ago relevant to that task, other than to see a problem that needs fixing?
It's a problem that needs fixing,
Yeah.
Alan.
So something like
let me
that
just
does not
finish.
happen
Let me
again.
just finish. Let me just finish. And it's been introduced that doing the bylaws work that you're engaged in right now is more important than repairing the damage done 2 years ago and the damage done by going against the convention by SEC. So what's happened is the work you're doing to do the work of Brian, and this is Brian's project, that Brian should be here advancing this. He advanced it initially, it didn't fly, and now it's been resurrected as something important to solve the problems of a contingent in the party that wants to be politically recognized and dignified and acknowledged. And right now there's shunning going on. I'm fighting the shunning. I am using the rules to get recognition. I have sought the blessing of the convention that green liberty resolutions would be recognized. And they were. 5 of the 6 were recognized by a majority. The SEC intervened and abolished, rejected a decision of convention. That is malfeasance, Alan. And the word malfeasance is hurtful and considered divisive. And I've been moderated for using that language. I don't know what other language to use. So what's happened is the party is in the grips of an irrational reaction to people they don't like for the ideas they hold. And
I think most people are trying to get beyond that.
So I think what I would say is more important than advancing the bylaws overhaul that you're engaged in would be to focus on the dispute resolution program. What would a dispute resolution program look like? And how would that dispute resolution apply to the circumstances of August or July 2020, when Connor was sent in to de-admin the dissident administrators on the Lane chapter Facebook site? That would be a very constructive thing to do and could lead to healing of the party. Because right now there's no healing. Dan remains a pariah. I want Dan to have full admin access so that we can engage in the work of the party building, and so on and so forth. He's not permitted to. He is deemed by others a persona non grata, a very evil man, a bad person. And that's
well, I think he's just demonstrated he's not
is.
trustworthy, I think is what it comes down to.
Okay, well, I can say that about other people, Justin, that they're not trustworthy. They didn't do what
you didn't follow the rules at the last convention. Is he the last person that should talk?
The convention, the convention decided and did what it did in January. And the people who were there, and it was a very large turnout, were all very satisfied.
It was a very large turnout. How many people were there?
Well, March was a small turnout, but January had, I think, upwards to 26 people in attendance.
Oh, 26.
Are you criticizing our convention program, Justin?
Are you seriously sitting there trying to with a straight face tell me that 26 people is a good turnout? That's a curated turnout, Chuck.
Compared to 14,
a turnout curated to advance your. I'm not gonna.
You're making.
I'm not. I'm gonna mute myself.
Okay.
Chuck, to the point you were making to me, that it would be more important to work on a conflict resolution process. My understanding is that John had proposed a conflict resolution process that's being tested out right now. And I know Dan had initiated a complaint about the things you've been talking about, I believe. And so John was trying to find people to respond to him and then to mediate it. I'm sure, like myself, other people have limited time to be involved in many things. But my understanding was that a mediation thing is being tested for use, and so work is being done on that.
I would say John's process is very complicated, hard to navigate. It's not a person, generally mediation, you have a human kind of actually sitting down and talking with people. There's been no discussion in this party about what happened in July over the intervention at the Facebook site. There's been, and the fact is, I think people are so positioned in their stance. They don't want to admit they're wrong, that they made a mistake, that there's no movement, there's no negotiating. And so I think this all needs to be in effect adjudicated at the convention, and the people who show up at convention need to listen to what people are saying. I'll make my case that Dan needs to be fully reinstated as a member in good standing, access to resources. He's been denied resources unjustly. It's been going on since 2020. We're going on 2 or 3 years of whatever it is of shunning. Lori Burton just got shunned from doing something she's been doing for the past 20 years in the party. She's been deemed persona non grata as a facilitator. I trust her. I don't have a problem with her, but Natalie and Justin have a problem with her. So 2 people have made a decision that's impacting an activist in the party and has basically made that person persona non grata. That's not just. Lori deserves a hearing. And the place you get a hearing in our party is at convention. That's where we do our business. And that's where I'm at with this. So this idea that we're going to have a convention that goes from 11 o'clock until 4 o'clock, is too short. We need to have a dedicated convention or a process to talk together about reinstating people, making people whole, and finding a way that Green Liberty Caucus chapter can be politically expressed in the party. And that means you all are going to have to accept that you're going to hear stuff that you don't agree with. Just like I have to live with the deafening silence of people unwilling to make a critique of things that need to be criticized. So this is the block. It's not even a block. I think we bury the hatchet and we make room for everyone. And, the original intent of the Green Perspectives was expressions of, non-mainstream points of view. But the issue, and I heard this was represented in the prior meeting, that there's a desire that the Pacific Green Party not be associated with anything controversial. And my position is that Green Liberty as a critic, as a chapter dedicated to accountability and transparency, protection for whistleblowers in order to advance our democracy, is all based on our platform principles that call for fighting corruption. It's all right there. Everything Green Liberty stands for, everything the Lane chapter people stood for and represented around their opposition to the official narrative around the COVID that made them COVID deniers. In hindsight, they were right. They were speaking the truth. Their skepticism was noble and right, but no one wants to acknowledge that. And this is where we have a problem, because people say, I need to leave the party. I need to go join the libertarians. Well, but I'm a Green. And I could say to the other people that tell me to leave the party that they should leave the party, that they should go to the Progressive Party of Oregon, which is, what they say, the Green Party is a progressive party. Well, we have a progressive party. But I'm not asking, and I've been told
Progressive Party endorses Democrats like you do, though, right?
I don't endorse Democrats.
RFK is your boy.
I praise Robert Kennedy for his presidential speech on peace and diplomacy.
You spend all of your social media equity on RFK Jr. and poo-pooing our likely candidate.
Well,
I want to build.
I don't have any power over the agenda of the convention other than as another member participating in it to vote on whether or not we're going to change the agenda. So, it's not something I can do anything about.
What is that exactly, Alan?
You were talking about wanting to put on the agenda discussion and resolution of this shunning and the other issues that you're explaining to me. But I don't have any power to change the convention's agenda, except as a single member of the members attending the convention, determining what the
Right.
agenda is ultimately
You
going to
would,
be.
you would have a vote to say, no, let's not waste our time on that. Let's do this other thing. So there's
Yes.
going to be the way we start our meetings, and this is where Lori Burton is valuable, is she has institutional memory. And the minutes to the March convention need to be formally entered into the September convention and recognized as valid. And if they're recognized as valid, then the event of the March convention was to endorse and say and recognize the validity of the January convention, which in February, soon after, the SEC rejected. But the March convention reinstated the intention of the January convention. Subsequent to the March convention, the SEC once again rejected the convention. So now we have to go back to September, go into September with the question, was the March convention valid? And I'm going to ask the September convention to say, yes, it was valid. There's nothing wrong with the March convention. In
this very meeting, I just said I didn't get a ballot for the March convention. I'm on the SEC and I registered for the convention, and you narrowly passed some things. So there was obvious voting irregularities. Seth, same thing. He's the secretary of the party, for crying out loud, and he registered for the convention, and yet he didn't get a ballot on these resolutions because what? You're saying that we didn't show up to the Zoom because I was at my daughter's thing and I don't get a ballot?
Listen,
How's that democracy?
Justin,
if I may, I'm getting tired. I don't want to be at this too long tonight.
That's fine.
It appears to me that there's a sticking point of interpreting the power of the SEC to authorize absentee ballots, and then a convention changing that when they adopt an agenda. And I don't know if that's dealt with in our current bylaws. I doubt it. So it'd be something that's kind of left up in the air to interpret.
It's not really left up in the air because, like I said, one, the SEC has the authority to interpret the bylaws, and two, the SEC is spelled out in the bylaws, and I can point you to the exact quote that I've become very familiar with them over the last few years. The SEC has the authority to establish absentee balloting rules, which we did. We interpreted what that meant, and we established the rules in advance of the last convention. And then those rules were openly flaunted, disregarded.
It's a sticky wicket because the members meeting in convention is the highest authority in the party.
It is only in certain contexts in the bylaws. They have the authority to ultimately set the agenda of the convention, but they don't have authority to establish who gets to vote.
So that's the point of the dispute. I get it.
I mean, but there's dispute, but there's already bylaws settle that dispute. Chuck can disagree. His Liberty Caucus can disagree and dispute it all they want. But if we're going by the current rules, until you change the rules, you broke the rules.
You make a good case. If this comes up at the convention and it gets on the agenda for discussion, I'll be interested in hearing more, but
okay.
I think we could go on and on tonight without coming to a resolution.
No. So this is the point. This needs to be adjudicated at convention. The convention needs to basically vote. Is the SEC right to basically make up? Because what Justin is saying is he voted to.
The convention doesn't have authority to decide that.
Let me just make a statement, Justin, that Justin's representing that the March convention was faulty because he wasn't present, but he registered. And we didn't conduct absentee.
It doesn't matter. That's somewhat inaccurate. The rules established said that any supporting member for whom we had contact information would receive a ballot. The rule wasn't even requiring them to register. Register was one of your arguments, but we went beyond that. We said, you don't even have to register. Look, if you're a supporting member and we have your email address, we're going to send you a ballot, and you are standing in the way of that. Correct?
We did not have absentee voting. We did not use OPA vote. We made decisions by consensus, or we went to a vote. We operated according to the rules about how we do business at convention.
So you're telling me that you
wanted the
changed a
advantage
consensus?
of
Wait,
an
wait,
absentee
wait.
ballot for which it was not available in that circumstance. We were not an SEC, we were not endorsing a position, and we were not doing a candidate nomination. So
You endorsed the resolution is endorsing a position, is it not?
Well, I'm going to have to
Well,
sign off. It's getting
it's a
late.
resolution. You can
Chuck-
change, you can make a
Chuck,
bylaws provision.
I'm glad I got to meet you and hear what you have to say. That's enough
Sorry.
for me tonight. I hope we get a chance to talk in a more productive manner, all of us, really.
Well, let me just say this, Alan. I'm glad you took a moment to listen. I don't know, for what it's worth, but basically this is an ideological civil war going on. And I've never experienced vitriol like I've experienced over my positions and my engagement with the Lane chapter, as I have in this group at the Green Party. So
Okay.
that's a sad state of social sociability. But let's keep talking, and I'm calling for burying the hatchet and just kind of making things go back, make room for everyone, and follow the rules.
Wait,
But meanwhile,
yeah, you're up for burying the hatchet, but you're bringing up Facebook takeovers from 2020. Anyway, Alan, I know was trying to leave. I'll leave.
yeah,
I'm sure
I'll
we'll
leave.
revisit the
Give
same
a-
argument soon.
I remembered a bit of context I wanted to give Chuck when
Okay.
you were talking about Brian reproposing the bylaws that he had written and not being involved in this process. I did talk to Brian on the phone. I've known him from the past. And as a matter of fact, he talked to me about wanting to change the bylaws way back in 2018 or so.
okay.
So this is the first
Well,
time I
then I'm
saw
wrong.
them,
I'm
but yeah,
wrong about that. Yeah, that's good. Thank you for
I did
correcting
get
me.
his perspective on it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think even though we get cells set up and systems set up, we're still going to need a means for people to talk together when they have argument. And right
Definitely.
now,
Definitely.
there's like, it's weird. But okay. Nice to meet you, Alan.
All right.
Right.
Good night.
All right, good luck. Bye. You have to end close the recording, Alan, before you sign off.
Oh, forgot I had any authority with
Yeah,
this.
you're the host. You can.
Well, mine says record. It doesn't
Well, it's
say.
going on. Click on the recording button on the top left, and you can find a disable button, and then you can leave the meeting.
Top left. Oh, I see. Okay. Click on right click, left click.
I think it'll be a left click,
Nothing's happening. Maybe I'm
and then try your right click. But if you click on it,
we're
off-
trapped here forever.
or you could go down to the control panel at the bottom and find a recording button.
Control
That-
panel at the bottom.
There'll be a button that says recording. And you can
Yeah.
recording. If you can't find it, then you can probably just leave the meeting and it'll probably just shut off automatically.
Oh, here we go.